Good morning. Ken Arzone here, July 23rd, 2020. Another video on my top 50. Just to recap, see if I can remember them all. I've done maybe close to 20 videos now. I did my gardening business. I've done dog tricks. I've done maintaining yards. Then I got into my top 50 series. Top 50 baseball players of all time, offensive. Then I did top 50 pitchers of all time, according to my list and my analysis. Then I did the 17 remarkable achievements by a baseball player in one game. Then I did top baseball records holders. Then I did the top 50 baseball player photographs in the Hall of Fame. Then I got into the top 50 movies, my favorite movies. Then I did the top 50 television shows, my favorites. Then I got into top 50 movie actors, men. Then I did another video, the top 50 actresses, women. Then I did the top 50 male characters in television history. Then I did the top 50 women characters in television history. Then I did my top 50 songs that I enjoy. I did the top 50 vacation spots that I've been to. Then I did the top 50 world events that I've admired. Hope I didn't leave anything out. Then this one that I'm doing right now is a top 50 books that I've read or seen or glanced through that I admired. Is there any video that I've left out? Maybe I have. But what do you think? 20 videos I've done. Let's get started with the top 50. I'm going to count from 50 to number 1. From 50 to number 10 are books not written in the order of my favorites, but just written or put down and listed as books that I've read or glanced through. But when I get to the top 10, from number 10 to number 1, those are my favorites. You'll be interested to see which books those are and what the number 1 book, my favorite book of all time. Should be an easy guess for you. Of course, as I go down my list, you may question, why didn't you read that book or that book? There's hundreds of books that I've read. And it'd be hard to list them in my top 50. These are ones I have on my shelf, I have possession of. Okay? If I leave any of your favorite books out, my apologies. And any classic books that I should have read that I haven't read, my apology for not reading that. For example, The Call of the Wild or Gone with the Wind or any Shakespeare books or any of those classics. H.G. Wells, all those authors. I haven't listed those ones I just mentioned. They're not in my top 50. There's many other books, autobiographies, sports books, science books, astronomy, geography, history, geology, science, mathematics, English, literature. A lot of these books are not in my top 50. But as I count down from 50 to number 1, you'll see that I do have sports books. I have autobiographies of movie stars. I have history books. And I have an almanac in one of my top 50. Let's get started. See what you think. Okay, number 50, Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. Very curious story. It was written in 1719 about a castaway. He spends 28 years on a remote tropical desert island near Trinidad. He encounters cannibals, captives, mutineers before he's finally rescued. But his first years on the island, he just tells a story of survival. Robinson Crusoe, your favorite. You're familiar with that one, right? It's a very interesting story. Number 50 on my list. Let's see how we do with my countdown, okay? I'll list the title, maybe a little bit about the book. Okay? Number 49 on my list. Alive, the story of the Andes survivors by Piers Paul Reed. This was made into a movie, this book. It's about the story of some rugby players, my apology for mispronouncing. They were on a small plane chartered to play a rugby match. And in 1972, it crashed in the Andes Mountains with 45 passengers aboard. And they were stranded, and nobody can find them. And it's a story of survival. Only 16 survived because 2 of them decided to climb out of the Andes and find help. It's a sad story of eventually they had to resort to eating flesh to survive. But it was an interesting story, Alive. That comes in at number 49 on my list. Number 48, history book, The Civil War. The complete text of the Civil War by Ken Burns and Jeffrey Ward. It's an illustrated copy. I've glanced through it. You have a lot of photographs in this book. You have a story of the Abraham Lincoln and the colonels and generals, Frederick Douglass, Robert E. Lee, and Ulysses S. Grant. Story of Gettysburg. The Civil War, very interesting tale in our history. Comes in number 48 on books that I've admired and read and glanced through. Okay. 47. This is an interesting book. It's called Outrage, The 5 Reasons Why O.J. Simpson Got Away with Murder by Vincent Bugliosi. He accounts the O.J. Simpson trial. He just lists all the mistakes the prosecution made and all the fables of the defense attorneys framing the police officers and all, and the framing of the blood. It was a very well-written book, and I'm convinced that O.J. Simpson was guilty by reading Outrage by Vincent Bugliosi. 47 on my list on books. Okay, counting down, number 46. The Life of Martin Luther by Barnes Scars. Biography. He led the Protestant Reformation. It talks about his life in the early days, and then he got fed up with the Catholic Church and the indulgence, and he wrote a 95 thesis and nailed it to the wall, a door in Wittenberg. Martin Luther, The Life of Martin Luther. I glanced through this book. Interesting character in our history. 45 on my list. The 9/11 Report, the National Commission on Terrorist Attacks upon the United States by Thomas Kean and Lee Hamilton. What happened on 9/11? You learn about the terrorists, Al-Qaeda, their intelligence, their collection. You have personal interviews with the presidents and how the terrorists were able to go through the screening in the airport and get on the planes and hijack them and slam them into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and then they tried for the Capitol, but the passengers on United 93 stopped the terrorists, and it crashed in Pennsylvania, the plane. So the 9/11 Report, interesting read, comes in number 45. 44, this is interesting. A TV show. I bought a book called Bewitched Forever, the immortal companion to the television show by Herbie Pilato. He's got a lot of books in there. He's got an episode guide. Remember the show Bewitched with Samantha Stevens and Darren Stevens and Endora? I bought the book Bewitched series guide episode. Hilarious. Of course, Samantha Stevens was played by Elizabeth Montgomery, and Darren Stevens was played by Dick York, and Endora was played by Agnes Moorehead. Interesting read. Comes in number 44. 43 on my list. Story of Grace Kelly, movie star, movie actress. Autobiographies. I like reading about their early childhood and in the movies they made. She was in High Noon. She was in Dial M for Murder. She was in Rear Window, and she was in It Takes a Thief to Catch a Thief. So, also, I was interested in reading this book because she had a tragic ending to her life. In the car with her daughter, and the car went off the cliff. She passed away. Died young. But Grace Kelly, one of my favorite actresses, she's in my top 50 movie actresses of all time. You know where I listed her? Number 1. Okay. So that was number 43 on my list. 42 on my list. Here's a book by Al Michaels, a sportscaster. He does football games, baseball games, hockey games. It's called You Can't Make This Up. I found this a very interesting read. He talks about his life and career and firsthand tales, thrilling events, and sporting events that he's covered. And he's had a 40-year career in television, play-by-play commentator. He's done the Super Bowl, World Series, NBA Finals, and the Stanley Cup Finals. And he did the Olympics. Al Michaels, You Can't Make This Up, comes in at number 42 on my list. 41, you'll be surprised at this one. When I was a kid, I read the Hardy Boys series. So one of my favorite books there is The Missing Chums, Hardy Boys by Franklin W. Dixon. A local bank is robbed, and then 2 of the Hardy Boys' pals or chums are kidnapped to disappear after a party. So the Hardy Boys, they use their courage and skill to outwit the criminals. Exciting climax in this book. Funny. Comes in at number 41 on my list of books that I've read. The Missing Chums, Hardy Boy series. Number 40 on my list. TV show again. Second one. First one was Bewitched. This one is the TV show 24. There's been books written on it. And I like Tara DeLulo. She wrote an official companion of seasons 1 through 6. About 24, Jack Bauer, special agent, Los Angeles branch of the CTU, which is the counter-terrorist unit. She gives a episode guide, and it follows the adventures, hour by hour, minute by minute, of plots, action, suspense, terrorism. So 24, the official companion. I got that on my list. Coming in at number 40. 39, another TV show. This one is the official companion of Smallville. Story of Clark Kent, Lana Lane, Lois Lane, Lex Luthor. Official companion by Craig Bryan. You know, the teenage years of Clark Kent in the fictional city of Smallville, and you have his development on the farm, his parents, Martha and Jonathan Kent. And then you have the love story with Lana Lane, and then eventually he goes to the Daily Planet and works and meets Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen. Smallville, the official companion. I've read that book. Got a lot of good pictures, interviews, behind the scenes, trivia. Okay, number 39. 38 on my list. Counting down. Wait till you see the top 10. 38. The Life Study of Genesis, the book of Genesis in the Bible, by Witness Lee. He covered every chapter in Genesis, 50 chapters. And he gives the interpretation, especially of the creation and the story of Noah. And then you get into Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Genesis. And he interprets and applies the divine revelation. So Witness Lee did a good job. The Life Study of Genesis. I have the book bound, and I've read all 50 chapters and the interpretation of what it means. The Garden of Eden, the creation, the fall of Adam. You get into Noah's Ark, and then Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Okay, number 38 on my list. Number 37 on my list. A Night to Remember is the title of the book. It's by Walter Lord. It talks about the sinking of the Titanic and the passengers' experience. As we know, some of the men, they sacrificed their lives so that women and children would be saved first in the boats. It talks about passengers being trapped below the decks. So Walter Lord, he called it The Night to Remember, a minute-by-minute recreation of how vivid the sinking was. Comes in 37 on my list, that book. 36, another TV show. This will be my fourth one. Bewitched. 24, Small, and now the TV show Lost. The Lost Chronicles, the official companion book by Mark Cotta-Vaz. He describes the episode guide and what it meant for the survivors of the oceanic flight that got stranded on the island. Talks about all the flashbacks I like these books that give a episode guide and review of a television show. So Lost, number 36 on my list. Counting down. Autobiographies. I love biographies and autobiographies. 35, John Wayne, The Life and Legend by Scott Yiman. Talks about John Wayne's early life, how he got into movies, started off slow as a sub role, and then eventually became the main star, and he did all these westerns. And he did crime shows, and he did disaster movies, or crime movies and disaster movies. He had 179 movie credits and television credits to his career. John Wayne talks about his marriage, talks about the women, the leading ladies he was with. So John Wayne autobiography, I kind of glanced through that one. 35 on my list. 34, baseball. And this is an autobiography of Ty Cobb, A Terrible Beauty by Charles Lerskin. You know, Ty Cobb holds like 91 baseball records. So he talks about his early life, and then he was with the Detroit Tigers, all the games he played, and the strives he had with his fellow players and even with fans. It's called A Terrible Beauty because he had some tragedy where he had fights all the time and he wasn't liked. But he was a talented baseball player, probably the greatest hitter who ever lived. 366 lifetime batting average. So Ty Cobb, he was the first one elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame. They call him the Georgia Peach. So that came in at number 34 on my list, the biography of Ty Cobb. 33 on my list. This is an interesting one. Mark Fuhrman wrote a book called Murder in Brentwood. This is the account of the Mark Fuhrman was a LAPD detective, and he recounts the night of discovering the murder of Nicole and the other guy. Oh boy, it slips my mind. What was his name? Well, O.J. Simpson's wife was brutally murdered, and then the guy who was in the restaurant, Ron Goldman, my apology, he came and returned the glasses, and he was murdered. Who did it? Well, O.J. Simpson was on trial for murder and was found innocent. But Mark Fuhrman wrote a book, and he details the crime scene, the blood stains and the gloves, and then he talks about the trial. It's a very good, interesting read, a perspective by Mark Fuhrman, the detective, on what happened. Okay, number 33. Number 32 on my list, baseball again, biography, Babe Ruth, The Life and Legacy of Major League Baseball's Most Famous Player by Charles River. I like the quote by the Babe. I only have one superstition, is that when I hit a home run, I touch all the bases. That's the only superstition that Babe Ruth had. And so this book is a biography about Babe's early life, you know, being in the reform school, and then he gets to the major leagues and he starts off as a pitcher, but then he was such a good hitter that he got traded to the Yankees. And then, you know the story, all the baseball records, home runs, RBIs, batting average, all the world championships that he helped the Yankees. So I've got that number 32 on my list. I've gone through that biography of Babe Ruth. Okay. 31 on my list, basketball. Jerry West. This is an autobiography, West by West, My Charmed and Tormented Life. Jerry West, he played for the Los Angeles Lakers, in the 1960s, 70s. He was called Mr. Clutch because at the end of the game, they gave him the ball and he would sink that shot. He only won one championship, but the book talks about his early life, his college in West Virginia, and then he joins the Lakers. They get to the finals and they lose to the Boston Celtics year after year after year, but eventually 1972, he got his one title with Wilt Chamberlain, Gail Goodrich. So West by West was an interesting autobiography that I read. Comes in number 31. Number 30 on my list, fiction. But Alexandre Dumas wrote a book called The Count of Monte Cristo, and I like the movie. Edmond Dantes, he gets framed and he's put into a prison, Chateau Fiche prison, and he's there for 14 years, but he escapes. And when he comes back, he finds this treasure on the island of Monte Cristo and becomes a count. And he comes back and gets revenge for those who put him in prison. The Count of Monte Cristo. The movie was excellent. I tried reading through the whole book. It was hard, but I kind of glanced through the chapters and made it. The Count of Monte Cristo. Number 30 on my list. Number 29, James Bond. The Secret World of 007 by Alistair Dougal. This book, the book that I got, just highlights the movies. I think there's 20 Bond movies, and I've seen them all. It gives the movie descriptions, photographs, gadgets, cars, women, plots, bad guys. So James Bond comes in at number 29 on my list as a book that I've glanced through. Okay, number 28, baseball again. I don't know how many baseball books I've read. This one is by Mickey Mantle. My Favorite Summer, 1956. That was the year he won the Triple Crown, and he gives an autobiography. Other books are biographies by other persons who wrote it. But this was an autobiography where Mickey Mantle wrote it. Talks about his early days, his father encouraging him to play baseball. Mickey Mantle wanted to give it up, and his father said, "Don't come home until you show me that you're a man." So he stuck with it and then became a famous superstar in baseball. Hit over 500 home runs and had like 8 World Series titles with the Yankees. Mickey Mantle, interesting story. Lived in New York. A lot of partying, but yet he still was successful in baseball. Okay, 27 on my list. Back to the O.J. Simpson trial again, and this was by 2 detectives, Tom Lang and Philip Van Natter. They wrote a book called Evidence Dismissed. They talk about their personal journals, police logs, audio tapes, and their cross-examination of O.J. Simpson in the police station and find out his version of what happened. And they probe and they get to the answers. And they talk about how they had to get on the stand and reveal all their investigation of the crime of what happened. Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman brutally murdered in Brentwood. And O.J. Simpson was found innocent of the crime, but all the evidence points that O.J. did it. This is my 3rd book on my top 50 that I've read, and it's a fascinating. I told you about Vincent Bugliosi wrote about the 5 reasons why O.J. got off, that book. Then I told you about the Mark Furman book. He was the detective. And then now this book by 2 more detectives. So it's a fascinating read. You know, Marcia Clark wrote a book, and then who was the other one? Christopher Darden wrote a book. So I've read all those books. But these books, they talk about what happened. It's a famous murder trial in history. That was 27 on my list. 26 on my list. This is my second Titanic book. The first one was A Night to Remember by Walter Lord. This one is Titanic, An Illustrated History by Donald Lynch. It's got a lot of photographs, talks about the night, what happened, the iceberg, April 15th, 1912. Infamous day in world history. The Titanic sank. 750 saved and over 1,200 lost. What a tragedy. So I'm interested in the Titanic, and whenever I go to museums, there's one in Las Vegas. I visit the museum and buy memorabilia. There's another museum in Halifax. I've been there, bought some memorabilia. So Titanic, very interesting. 25, back to movie stars. I like books on sports figures, movie actors, actresses, and TV series for some reason. This one is Steve McQueen, The Films of Steve McQueen by Casey St. Genars. Talks about all the movies that McQueen did. He only had around 50 movies. He died young. But as far as movie actors, in my top 50, Steve McQueen came in at number 2 as my favorite. Who was number 1? John Wayne. So The Films of Steve McQueen, I glanced through this book, put it in my top 50, coming in number 25. All right, counting down. 24 on my list. You'll be surprised at this one. The Great Wall of China. It's a history book by Daniel Schwartz. It's a fascinating book because you open it up and it's got all these photographs of the wall that extends, I don't know, is it 2,000 miles in China? And it was built 1,500 years ago. And how they build it and go over in the mountains and hills and canyons. And he's got photographs of the wall, the Great Wall of China. I glanced through this book and it intrigued my curiosity. Comes in number 24 on my list. 23, baseball again. This one is the National Baseball Hall of Fame Almanac by Baseball America. I like this book because it has all the players who have made the Hall of Fame, and it gives their stats, gives them a photograph, and gives their brief history of how they performed. I bought this book in Cooperstown, New York. It's one of my favorite books. The National Baseball Hall of Fame Almanac comes in at number 23 on my list. 22 on my list. Bill O'Reilly he had a series of books he calls them the Killing series. This one is Killing Jesus. And he details the events leading up to the crucifixion and the resurrection. Jesus of Nazareth, 2,000 years ago, arrested by the Jewish, killed by Roman soldiers. And he gives a detailed account of what happened in the life of Jesus. So interesting read, Killing Jesus by Bill O'Reilly. He's got a TV show. I watch him to get a news update. He's a fair guy. 21 on my list. Biography of another movie star. How many have I done? I've done John Wayne, Grace Kelly, Steve McQueen. This one is on Charlton Heston, Hollywood's Last Icon by Mark Elliott. The biography was a very good read and easy to read. Talks about Charlton Heston's early days, and then he gets into the movies, and then it talks about his experience on the movie sets, Leading Ladies, Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur. the movie Earthquake, Airport. Charlton Heston talks about his glamour life. It also talks about his personal life. He was married to the same woman for over 50 years. So I like Charlton Heston. Where did he rank in my top 50 movie actors? I believe he was number 3. Heston, Steve McQueen was 2, and John Wayne was number 1 as far as my order of favorite actors. Charlton Heston. Good read, the biography of his life story. Came in at number 21. 20 on my list. This is the second book that I've read on that airline disaster with the rugby players that crashed into Chile, the Andes Mountains. Remember I talked about the book Alive? Well, this book is called Miracle in the Andes by Nandando Parado. He's one of the ones who hiked out and rescued his fellow teammates, and only 16 survived. There were 45 passengers, 16 of them made it. Nandando was the one who, after, I believe, 60 days in the Andes, he said, we've got to get help. There's no one coming for us, so we're going to go out, hike out, and get rescued. And he made it. It talks about his 10-day journey. Miracle in the Andes. They were stranded for 60 days, and it took him 10 days to climb out. And then he finally found the grasslands, and they ran into a peasant, and he said, please save us. They got on the horseback, and then they contacted the authorities, and he led them back to save his teammates. Miracle in the Andes, a very good read. Coming at number 20 on my list. Number 19, Interesting Religion. Synopsis of the Books of the Bible by John Nelson Darby. Wrote 5 volumes and gave his interpretation of what the books of the Bible mean. Now, it's a hard read. I've kind of glanced through it, but I put that as influential books that I've read in my life. John Darby, he was a Brethren in the 1800s. So I really read religious books. I've read sports books, history books, biographies, autobiographies, science books, geography books. So number 19, Synopsis of the Books of the Bible by John Nelson Darby. 18 on my list, another religious book, Billy Graham, God's Ambassador by Russ Busby. Talks about the early life of Billy Graham. He's a preacher preaching the gospel of salvation. It's a good read. Billy Graham's written a lot of books. Just As I Am, I read that one. But what was fascinating about Billy Graham is all the crusades he had and all the conventions and the speeches and the gospel he's preached to and all the countries he's visited. And I believe he had a 40 to 50 year, maybe 60-year career. Not sure how many years, but he was a preacher of God's salvation. Billy Graham, I enjoyed reading his biography, and he's written autobiography. 18 on my list. Number 17, counting down. Football. Haven't done football. I've done basketball, Jerry West. I've done baseball, Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb, Mickey Mantle. How about football? Tim Tebow, Through My Eyes. He was a Florida Gator. Got drafted to the Denver Broncos. He tells his story from early days and then getting into the college life. He won 2 titles in college. And Through My Eyes, he tells the story about his faith in Christ. And I admired that. And the strength that he would get on the football field. Good guy, Tim Tebow. He's written some other books too. I read them. So 17 on my list. Number 16, basketball. Like I said, I like a lot of sports books, especially the biography and autobiographies. I keep repeating myself. How about this one? Pistol Pete Maravich by Mark Kriegel. Boy, was he a talented college basketball player. Did you know that he averaged 44 points a game for 3 years? All 3 years, 44 points a game was his average. He had 50-point games, 60-point games. Played for Louisiana, LSU. What a talented player. I enjoyed reading his biography and the ups and downs he had. He made the NBA, but only played about 10 years. Got injured too much. He had faith in Christ, turned his life over and believed in Christ toward the end, but he died young. Died on playing practice basketball. Pete Maravich, what a talent. If you watch video of him, he could handle the ball and shoot the ball. He had a 68-point game in the NBA. He had a 69-point game in college. A lot of 50-point games. 16 on my list. Number 15, back to Bill O'Reilly. He's, like I said, he had the Killing series. This one is on Killing Lincoln. He recounts the story of 1865, the Civil War, President Lincoln and his battles, Robert E. Lee, the Confederate, John Wilkes Booth, and the assassination. Killing Lincoln is a good read, easy to read. So I've got him number 15 on my list. A good account of what happened leading up to the assassination of Abraham Lincoln by John Wilkes Booth and the story of the Civil War. 14 on my list. Now this one's interesting. This is the story of John Wilkes Booth. Killing Lincoln focuses on Abraham Lincoln and what happened. This one is called Manhunt, The 12-Day Chase for Lincoln's Killer by James Swanson. He recounts the assassination and then the 12 days it took to find John Wilkes Booth. Eventually found him in the barn, and the barn was set on fire. But Manhunt is a good read by James Swanson. Intrigue, betrayal. It's a gripping, hour-by-hour account of what John Wilkes Booth did after the assassination in Ford's Theater. Jumped off the balcony, went out the side door, got on the horse, and then Mary Surratt and on all those co-conspirators helped him escape. Manhunt comes in at number 14. 13, back to religion. Miller's Church History. This is a recount of the 2,000-year history of Christianity. Miller's Church History. It was written in the 1800s. Starts with the death of Christ, the Apostle Paul's journey, the Roman persecution, the Crusades, the Reformation, the Catholic Protestant churches, and England. Miller's Church History. It's a large book. Talks a lot about getting to Martin Luther, and then you get into Catholicism and the Protestant churches. The history of the Christianity. I like history books. Miller's Church History, number 13. Number 12, counting down almost to the top 10. This will be I think the third or fourth book. Now, the second book by Vincent Bugliosi. He's a good writer. 4 Days in November. This is the story of the assassination of John F. Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963 by Lee Harvey Oswald. 4 Days in November. He recounts hour by hour every minute detail of what happened and the assassination and the aftermath. Good read. There's been a lot. I've read a lot of books about the assassination of JFK. And Vincent Bugliosi, he believes that Lee Harvey Oswald was the only person. Now, I tend to believe there had to be somebody else involved. You know, the grassy knoll and maybe the second shooter. Vincent believes it was just Oswald only, so he really focuses on that. The book depository and the 3 shots. I believe there are 4 shots, but we can debate the conspiracies on that for hours and hours and hours. But 4 Days in November comes in at number 12. Number 11, baseball. Illustrated history by Ken Burns. He goes way back in the 1800s. Alexander Cartwright and the rules, and Ken Burns did a DVD series on it, very well done. And his book, just illustration and stories and recounts of how professional baseball. Number 11. All right, the top 10 favorite books. You're gonna be interested in this list here, because there's some guy in there that has about 6 books. I'll tell you who the author is. All right, number 10, Luckiest Man. This is baseball. Lou Gehrig's biography, written by Jonathan Eigg. This is a very good read because one of my favorite players is Lou Gehrig. It gives an intimate portrait. He's an American hero. He was very shy in the beginning, but he became a very famous first baseman for the Yankees. Played in 2,130 straight games, had 493 homers, 2,000 RBIs almost, won World Series. He batted behind the Babe. The story of Lou Gehrig is very touching because he died young. Today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. You think he died at age 41, too young, from Lou Gehrig's disease, which is multiple sclerosis. So he comes in at number 10, luckiest man. Number 9, Mutiny on the Bounty. Classic 1932 novel by Charles Knaufuss and James Norman Hall, based on the mutiny. Fletcher Christian and his crew mutiny against William Bligh, the evil captain who punished his fellow shipmates. He'd tie them to a rack and give them 20 lashes if they stole water or fruit. So the crew mutinied against him. They sent Bligh on the ship, or on a small little boat, and the mutineers, they escaped to Pitcairn Island. Fascinating story, Mutiny on the Bounty. Comes in at number 9. Number 8, okay. Mysterious Encounter. You ever hear of this book? It was written in 2005, Mysterious Encounter. I'll tell you the author after I tell you what it's about. Do we all have a duplicate of ourselves living in this world? This question puzzles a person named Bob who believes he sees a mirror image of himself on the other side of the world. Do we have a mirror image, someone who looks just like us, living in this world, and they're living a life, and they exactly look like us? Do we have a duplicate? Is there a parallel universe? What is the reason? This mysterious encounter is the incredible adventure of a man who discovers that he does have it. He finds him, he encounters him, and there's shocking consequences that happen, and the ending is astounding. Who wrote the book? Me. Kenneth Arneson is the author. Mysterious Encounter. I got him at number 8 on my list. I got to put myself in this list. I've written some books. Number 7, The Fugitive Views and Reviews. This is a television show. Remember The Fugitive? Well, this is volumes 1 through 4. There are 3 authors, Bob Nirenberg, K.J. Batten, and Ken Arzon, me. We wrote a book and we reviewed 120 episodes of The Fugitive TV series. Richard Kimball, falsely convicted for the murder of his wife. And he's being chased by an obsessive Lieutenant Philip Gerard. And Kimball is looking for the one-armed man who he saw run from his house on the night of the murder. And the series is on for 4 years, 120 episodes, and we review every episode and give it thumbs up or thumbs down. They're classic episodes, and obviously the final 2 climax the entire series. And Kimball does find the one-armed man, and they have a classic fight scene on the tower. And Lieutenant Gerard takes out the one-armed man, and there's a witness that comes forward and says that Richard Kimball is innocent. Classic series, and we wrote 4 volumes, over 30,000 words. I believe 700 pages. Check it out, The Fugitive Views and Reviews. Okay, number 7 on my list, Reunion Memories, Reflections of a Family, written by Ken Arzon, me, and my sister, Rosie Rundle. This book talks about the 10 family reunions we had in Oxnard, California. My father rented rooms for all his kids and grandkids at the Embassy Suites in Oxnard, California. And we had a family reunion for 3 to 4 days. We had dinners, we had breakfasts, we had games, we were on the beach, we had activities, and the bonding between everybody. So we wrote a book, Reunion Memories, Reflections of a Family. Comes in number 7 on my list. Number 6, Memo to the Twilight Zone, written by yours truly, Ken Arzon, and Kelly Batten. Co-authors. We review all 156 episodes of the TV series The Twilight Zone. This book journeys into the wondrous land of imagination, and check the signposts up ahead. You remember the series, right? Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, Mirror Image, all the classic episodes of The Twilight Zone. We review all 156, and we give ratings, good, bad, or terrible. So that comes in number 6 on my list. Recap. In the top 10, Mysterious Encounter by Ken Arzon, me. Fugitive Views and Reviews by me and 2 other authors. But I was the one who compiled everything together. So I get first billing. Not to boast, but I will boast. And then Reunion Memories. That's by me. I compiled it. But my sister Rosie helped me with that one. And then number 6, Memo to the Twilight Zone. 2 authors, but I compiled it. So I get first billing. Now number 5. Where am I at? I better review the top 10 here. Number 10, Luckiest Man, Lou Gehrig's story. Number 9, Mutiny on the Bounty. Number 8, Mysterious Encounter. Number 7, The Fugitive Views and Reviews. Number 6, The Reunion Memories. Number 5, Memo to the Twilight Zone. All right, number 4, another book by Ken Arzon, me. I got to give props to myself, and I'm going to put myself in the top 10. If you don't like it, tough. Number 4, The Fugitive Encyclopedia. I wrote a solo book on the Fugitive series. Now, I told you about the three of us that wrote the episode guide, The Fugitive Views and Reviews, all 4 seasons, 120 episodes. But I wrote a book on the Fugitive Encyclopedia, What Could Have Been. And I cover everything of the Fugitive show you can think of. Richard Kimball, Lieutenant Gerard, the One-Armed Man, Kimball's sister, relatives, every episode, all the love interests, all the people and friends he met, all the trials and tribulations, all the time he rescued people, all the places he visited. I just go on and on and on, and I list my favorite episodes and the not so good episodes and the storyline and how I believe the production should have done. This Fugitive Encyclopedia covers everything from A to Z. Number 4 on my list. Number 3, another book by Ken Artizone, Meet. Life Gardening 43. This is the autobiography of my life story from birth until retirement and more. I talk about my early years. I lived in Chicago with my family, and then I talk about the generation of the 1950s, and then again in the 1960s, I talk about my early childhood. I had a paper route, the friends I had, the places we visited with my family. Then I get into the 1970s where I moved out of my home, went to junior college, went to university, got a college degree. Then I met my wife, I got married. And I talk about, we have our first baby, or my wife is pregnant toward the end of 1979. Oh, I talk about my jobs in the 70s where I was a busboy for Love's Restaurant, 1971 through 1974. And then in 1974, I started my landscaping business. I talk about that. The 70s is a crucial chapter. Then I get into the 1980s where I have my children, my 4 children, 4 kids in 6 years, graduate from college, and then we rent a house, and then we buy a house. That was the 80s. And then the 90s, talk about raising my kids, and then my experiences in the landscape business. I get into the 90s and the 2000s, talk about my maturing years, and then I prepare for retirement, 2010. Talk about all my experiences, not only with raising kids, but also becoming a grandfather. And then eventually, 2007, I talk about that day of retirement. So, Life Gardening 43 talks about all my trials and tribulations and successes and failures in the landscape business. That was number 3. Number 2 on my list is another book, last book I wrote, Thanks Lord for the Day, 2018. And I just talk about everything that I just mentioned. I talked about, I was recapping the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010. That's in the book, Thanks Lord for the Day. Got ahead of myself. Number 3 on my list was the Life Gardening book, 43. That's about my gardening business and my experiences from childhood up to the present. And then my next book, number 2 on my list, Thanks Lord for the Day, recaps everything I just mentioned. So what is number 1 on my list as far as books that I admire? The Bible. 39 books in the Old Testament and 27 books in the New Testament. And I read the Bible 5 times through. Now, in the Old Testament, I probably glanced through a lot of the Chronicles and Numbers, Deuteronomy and Leviticus and all those, Joshua, all those books. But in the New Testament, I've read every book, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all the way through Revelation. And the Bible is a very interesting, fascinating, and spiritual and uplifting read. And my favorite version is the American Standard Version, 1901. There's a lot of versions out there. But the Bible is an incredible book. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Psalms, Proverbs, all the books of the Bible. It's my favorite book in the Bible, Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then Matthew, Mark, the Gospels, Sermon on the Mount, story of Jesus' life, his crucifixion, his resurrection. Then in the epistles, the Apostle Paul, Romans, Ephesians, Colossians, Galatians, Thessalonians. Then you have Peter wrote some books, Jude. And then you have the book of Revelation by John. And the New Jerusalem coming down on the new heaven and the new earth. The Bible, incredible. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. John 1:14, and the Word became flesh and tabernacled among us. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever should believe in him should not perish, but have eternal life. There are so many verses that are inspirational. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And our Father, Jesus taught us to pray, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. I can quote many, many, many more verses. Great is the Lord and greatly is to be praised in the Psalms. How about, I can go on and on and on, but the Bible. Check out the American Standard Version 1901. It's a little better than the King James Version. King James Version says, thus saith the Lord, and it says, in my Father's house are many mansions. The better translation is, in my Father's house are many abodes, many abiding places. I can go on and on and on, but the Bible comes in at number 1 of my favorite books. And let's see here. Here I have right here. It's nice to have a little pocket New Testament. Carry it around with you. And you can open it up and you can quote any verse, you know. How about this verse? I'll give you another little tidbit here. This is a good verse. Matthew 28:20. Jesus speaking. Actually, Matthew 28:19 and 20. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. How about that verse? Well, you just open up Matthew 1:1. How about this? The book of the generation of Jesus Christ, son of David, son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac begot Jacob, and Jacob begot Judah and his brothers. It's just incredible, the Bible. All right, books of the New Testament: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the Acts, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, Philemon, Hebrews, James, 1 Peter, 2 Peter, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, Jude, Revelation. I could list all the books of the Old Testament. You have Psalms, Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and his law he meditates night and day. So the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, 1:1. And God said, let there be light. And then God said, let us make man in our image. Incredible book, the Bible. All right, I've been preaching a little bit here. What do you think of my top 50 on the books? Just a general history books, autobiographies, biographies, sports books, religious books, TV series books. All right, it was kind of fun. Thanks for watching. Ken AutoZone. I'm out.